You're listening to Coupled With, the podcast that helps you take the guesswork out of feeling seen, heard, and valued in your relationship. If you've ever felt stuck in the same arguments, struggled to stay connected, or wondered how to better communicate with your partner, you're in the right place. I'm Dr. Rachel Orlick, a couples therapist and coach, and together, we're going to make relationships make sense. Let's dive in. Emotional closeness is supposed to feel good, easy even. And yet, for so many people in genuinely loving relationships, it doesn't. At least not all the time. It feels heavy or tense, or like something that takes more effort than it should. And then comes the worry. Is something wrong with us? This is an Encore episode, and it's one I keep coming back to because I think it challenges a myth that quietly damages a lot of relationships. The idea that if the relationship is right, closeness should be effortless. It isn't. And that's not a red flag. That's just real love. Before we dive in, I want to say thank you to everyone who has been listening. You've stuck with me for the past year. You're showing up over the summer, week after week, and that means so much to me. New episodes are going to be returning August 31st, and I want to come back with content that actually matters to you. So I've put a link in the show notes where you can submit questions or topics that you'd like me to cover. I'll be choosing some of them for upcoming episodes. So tell me what's on your mind. Okay, let's get into it. Emotional closeness is supposed to feel good, warm, connecting, reassuring. That's the story most of us grew up with. When you love each other, closeness should feel easy, natural, almost automatic. So when it starts to feel heavy, awkward, or strangely hard, people don't get curious. They get worried. They start wondering what's wrong with the relationship, or worse, what's wrong with them. We've been given a very specific message about love. If it's hard, it's not the right fit. If closeness feels tense, you're incompatible. If you have to work at it, you're doing it wrong. Movies, social media, and even some self-help language sell us a version of love that's intense, seamless, and deeply connected at all times. But that version of love isn't built for real long-term relationships. So when emotional closeness doesn't feel like a rom-com highlight reel, people assume something has gone wrong. They worry they chose the wrong partner, that they're too much or not enough. Even people in therapy or coaching quietly wonder why the work hasn't made things feel easier, why closeness still takes effort, why it sometimes feels safer to pull back rather than lean in. Here's what I want to offer upfront right now. Emotional closeness isn't meant to be effortless all the time. Real relationships move in and out of connection. They have long stretches of normal closeness, moments of distance, and periods where reconnection takes work. None of that means the relationship is broken. In this episode, we're going to talk about why emotional closeness so often feels harder than we think it should, and why that difficulty is not a sign of failure or incompatibility. We'll bust some of the myths that keep people panicking about normal relational experiences and start reframing closeness as something that's built, lost, and rebuilt over time. Because lifetime love isn't a movie scene. It's a practice. This is usually how people start describing it. We love each other, we get along. On paper, things look good. But closeness feels complicated. Not bad exactly, just heavier than expected. Conversations feel loaded. Reaching for each other takes more effort. And there's confusion about why something that's supposed to feel connecting can also feel tense or draining. I hear this a lot from my clients, especially people who are thoughtful and self-aware. They're not avoiding intimacy. They're trying. One client told me, I don't understand why being close feels like work when we're not even in crisis. They weren't disconnected in an obvious way, but every emotionally meaningful conversation felt like it carried weight. Like there was a pressure to get it right, to stay connected, to not mess it up. For some people, that pressure shows up as leaning in harder, more talking, more processing, more checking to make sure everything is okay. They're seeking reassurance that the closeness is still there. For others, it shows up as pulling back, less vulnerability, more surface level interaction. Not because they don't care, but because closeness starts to feel like something that demands energy that they're not sure that they have. What's important to notice is that this usually isn't about lack of love. It's about what closeness has come to mean. When being close starts to feel like responsibility, emotional vigilance, or risk, the nervous system stops experiencing it as rest. It becomes something to manage. This is where people start telling themselves stories. Maybe we're not compatible. Maybe I'm bad at intimacy. Maybe I need too much or can't give enough. Because we've been taught that the right relationship should feel easy. These experiences get interpreted as red flags instead of signals. So when closeness feels hard, the question isn't what's wrong with us. It's what closeness has come to represent, and whether it's carrying more than it was meant to. Underneath all of this is a powerful myth. If the relationship is right, closeness should feel natural and effortless. When it doesn't, we assume something is wrong with the fit, the partner, or ourselves. We don't question the myth. We question the relationship. And that belief sets people up to panic the moment closeness requires work. Rom-coms and cultural love stories reinforce this constantly. They show passion without fatigue, intimacy without interruption, and connection without maintenance. Even long-term love sagas, version of lifelong love, will skip the years of stress, illness, boredom, and misattunement that real couples navigate. So when real relationships move into quieter or more disconnected seasons, people assume they failed instead of recognizing normal relationship weather. This myth also sneaks into therapy and coaching spaces. There's often an unspoken hope that if you do enough work, learn the tools, gain the insight, and heal your past, closeness will stop being hard. Conflict will soften, distance will disappear, but no therapist or coach can remove the friction that comes with two nervous systems, two histories, and a shared life. So here's the reframe. Difficulty does not equal dysfunction. Emotional closeness is not meant to be a constant state of deep connection. Most long-term relationships spend a lot of time in normal connection. Functional, caring, emotionally available, but not intense. And at times, they move into disconnection, usually in response to stress, change, or overload. What matters isn't avoiding these shifts. It's having the capacity to notice them and work your way back over time. When you stop measuring real love against an unrealistic standard, closeness starts to feel less like a test and more like something you grow into again and again. From a nervous system perspective, it makes complete sense that closeness can feel hard. Closeness activates attachment. It brings vulnerability, dependence, and the possibility of loss online all at once. When you're emotionally close, your nervous system isn't just enjoying connection, it's also scanning for safety. That means closeness can feel warm and risky at the same time. When the nervous system senses risk, it shifts into protection. For some people, that looks like leaning in, seeking reassurance, clarity, or emotional confirmation. For others, it looks like pulling back, creating space, numbing out, or staying surface level. These aren't character flaws. They're protective strategies designed to manage intensity. Attachment history shapes this. If closeness once came with unpredictability, emotional burden, or the need to manage someone else's feelings, your system learned to stay alert. Even in healthy adult relationships, that learning doesn't vanish. So as closeness deepens, your body may brace for something heavy, even when your adult mind knows that you're safe. Over time, this can quietly change how closeness feels. Instead of a place to rest, it becomes a place of effort, a place where you have to show up correctly, stay regulated, and not mess things up. Emotional intimacy starts to feel like work, not because you don't want it, but because your nervous system associates closeness with vigilance. This is also why disconnection is so common. When the system gets overloaded, distance becomes a form of regulation. Pulling back can help the body settle, even if it creates emotional discomfort. Disconnection isn't always avoidance. Often it's the body saying, "This is a lot right now." Really quick, I created a 7-day email course and I want to make sure that you know it exists. It's called Break the Cycle. Every day for a week, you get one email that goes a little deeper into the pattern underneath your conflict. Why the same fight keeps happening, what's actually driving it, and what it looks like to start interrupting it from your side. Each one comes with a short activity, 5 minutes, maybe less. It's free. It's not a sales pitch dressed up as content. It's just the work in a format that fits into a regular work week. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while and thinking, okay, I get this conceptually, but I'm still kind of stuck, this is the next step. You can sign up at my website and I'll link it in the show notes. All right, back to the episode. The problem isn't that distance shows up. It's how quickly we interpret it as danger. Healthy relationships aren't defined by constant closeness. They're defined by the ability to move between closeness, distance, and repair without panic. When closeness starts to feel hard, couples usually fall into one of two patterns. In the first, people chase closeness. This is where you talk more, process more, check in more, trying to get things back to connection as quickly as possible. Every wobble feels like something that has to be addressed immediately. In this pattern, normal dips feel threatening. Silence becomes distance, distance becomes disconnection, and disconnection becomes danger. Closeness carries urgency instead of safety, and intimacy starts to feel tense. The second pattern looks very different. Instead of chasing closeness, people retreat from it. They share less, keep things lighter, stay busy, or avoid emotionally loaded conversations. Not because closeness isn't wanted, but because it's starting to feel like pressure the system doesn't feel resourced to handle. Both patterns create instability, even though they're trying to solve the same problem. One leads to burnout or resentment, and the other leads to loneliness or quiet drift. In both cases, connection is being managed instead of allowed to ebb and flow. There is a third option, and it gets talked about far less. It's allowing the relationship to move between connection, normal distance, and reconnection without panicking. In this pattern, closeness isn't measured by intensity. It's measured by repair, by the ability to notice distance, name it without blame, and move back towards each other gradually. Emotional safety comes from knowing that distance doesn't mean abandonment, and closeness doesn't mean losing yourself. Once people realize closeness isn't meant to be constant, the question becomes, what do we actually do differently? And this is where I want to slow things down. The shift here isn't about adding a new communication rule or mastering another skill. It's about changing how you relate to closeness itself. One of the most helpful moves is learning to tolerate normal connection. Not the highlight reel version of intimacy, but the steady functional kind. Sharing life, coordinating logistics, offering care, being emotionally available without digging into depth every time you talk. Normal connection isn't a problem state. It's the foundation that makes deeper closeness possible without burning your nervous system out. This also means allowing for periods of disconnection without treating them like emergencies. Disconnection often shows up when life is heavy, with stress, illness, transitions, and grief. Instead of asking, how do we get closeness back right now? The question becomes, how do we stay oriented to each other while this is hard? Practically, that might look like naming where you are without demanding resolution. Choosing regulation before repair. Giving yourself time to settle before going deep. These aren't avoidance strategies, they're safety strategies. It's learning how to tolerate discomfort. Another key shift is taking some emotional weight off the relationship itself. When every hard feeling has to be processed together, closeness starts to feel like work. Expanding support through friends, therapy, creativity, and movement can give the relationship a little bit more room to breathe and can help you regulate so that you can come back to your partner and talk about what's really important. Over time, closeness starts to feel less urgent and more accessible. You move toward it when there's space and step back when things are heavy, without interpreting either as failure. The goal isn't perfect intimacy, it's sustainability. If emotional closeness has felt harder than you expected, I want to be very clear. That doesn't mean you're failing at love. It doesn't mean you chose the wrong partner. It means you're in a real relationship with real nervous systems and real life shaping how closeness shows up. One of the most damaging myths about love is that the right relationship should feel deeply connected all the time. Long-term relationships just don't work that way. They move through seasons of depth, normal connection, distance, and repair. Health isn't the absence of distance, it's the ability to come back. When you stop interpreting difficulty as failure, something will start to soften. You panic less when closeness feels off. You get curious instead of reactive. That shift alone creates more safety than any perfectly timed conversation. Therapy and coaching can help you understand patterns and repair more cleanly. But no one can promise constant emotional depth. The goal isn't to live in peak connection. It's to build a relationship that can stretch without snapping. Most of the time, healthy relationships live in normal connection. Deeper closeness grows out of that steady base, especially when you walk through hard things together instead of expecting intimacy to remain untouched by them. So if closeness feels hard right now, take that as an invitation to widen your view of love. Emotional intimacy isn't something you achieve and hold on to. It's something you build, lose, and rebuild again and again by staying willing to return to each other. That willingness, more than intensity, is what sustains love. One last thing before you go. If you heard me mention the free 7-day email course earlier and thought you'd look it up later, later is now. It's called Break the Cycle. It's free, and the link is in the show notes. I'll see you next week. That's it for today's episode of Coupled With. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to hit subscribe so you never miss what's next. And if you found it helpful, please share it with a friend or leave a quick rating and review. It really helps more than you know. And if you're curious about how we might work together or want more resources to strengthen your relationship, head over to my website, www.drrachelorlick.com. You'll find free tools, podcast extras, and ways to go deeper. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.